Today, I want to facilitate a conversation between you and your inner artist. And yes, you have an inner artist. We all do. And your inner artist is, for everyone, it's this part of you that sees reality as it is and as what it can be. And your inner artist basically tries to get us from where we are right now to where we can be. And for each of us, our inner artist is especially excited. It's just another character in the whole set of characters that define us when we're younger. And what ends up happening, especially for a lot of us, is that we learn that our inner artist isn't as valuable. And sometimes society tells it to us, but the worst is really when we tell it to ourselves. Your inner artist is the part of you that gets to see and engage in reality and gets to be an active player in it. Your inner artist thinks in ways creatively that the rest of you doesn't always. And sometimes it's much easier to automate and to say, okay, well, I want to make X amount of more money. I want to make X amount of more progress. And your inner artist is not as concerned with the ego. It's not concerned with how do I appear to 5 more people or 10 more people. Your inner artist is the genuine part of you that says, I was put on this planet to do something, and I want to go out and do it. And internally, we all have these different aspects of ourselves. And additionally, we all have an inner critic. It's this part of ourselves, and the inner critic, the inner businessman, the inner whatever it is. And all these are in conversation, and we're in conversation with them constantly. When you see an artist in the outside world and you're thinking to yourself, well, must be nice, but that's not responsibilities in the same way. Like, don't they know that they have to bring in X amount of money? Don't they know that they have to? And we're not actually speaking to them, especially when we're just thinking it in our mind. But what we're doing, and often when we have these judgments about other people, is we're having a conversation internally with ourselves. And the way that you're going to treat that external artist is very often a reflection of how you're treating your own internal artist. Now, what are some of the things that we know about the artist, the character? The artist, for many, is starving, because what are the things that you're closing? What are the things that you're bringing in? How can you make clear to me your value? And for some reason, we think as we get older, for some people, we think now the time has come to be responsible, and we really start feeding exclusively what we call the responsible part of ourselves. And we let our artist not die, but we don't let our artist grow up with us. Now, when I say that you need to be honest with yourself about who your artist is, it is, what does your artist see as more than it can be right now? Now, for some people, that's the music industry, and they're musical artists. And very often we hear about these huge artists, and then at a certain point, we feel that they've almost lost their brand. It's like they've worked so much to grow. They started off, and they were started off in some garage, or for whatever reason it is, they were attached to music, and slowly, their artist grew up and grew up and grew up. And then at a certain point, there's a part of them. What does it mean to sell out? It's to take your artist and say, I know what you are, but no longer are you going to be an artist who works for your own inspiration, own creativity, what motivates you, what inspires you. You are now a worker. And don't get me wrong, we each have workers inside us also. We have those parts of ourselves that just need to be reminded, and it is a mature response. If you have a family, you have children, you have a wife, You are responsible not only for yourself anymore, but being responsible not only for yourself doesn't mean you're no longer responsible for yourself. And when you are responsible for yourself, you're responsible for every single part of yourself. I want people to be honest and be able to talk to their inner artists and to ask, what is inspiring you? What does motivate you? What would excite you? Where could you go if you were no longer acting in all these ways that are entirely limited by criticism, entirely limited by, well, I don't know if I can make that a reality. It's a room for imagination that is pure, that is productive, that is exciting. Now, I can't tell you that speaking to your inner artist isn't difficult. But when you silence your inner artist, and I'm sure this happens for a lot of people, when you have made a lot of progress as an artist, so you end up progressing a lot in that field, and then sometimes people go from who they authentically are and the art that they're bringing to this world, and then they tell their artist, well, you know how to produce that once, you should just produce it again. And they don't give themselves the time, they don't give their artist the flow. An artist can burn out just like anyone else. Your artist is a human being, is a part of you. So I want to afford you the opportunity to be able to interact honestly with your artist. Some of the things that you can ask is, where do I find the room for you in a 9-to-5 life? In a 9-to-5 life with work, with kids, with whatever it is. How do I make time for you? I had read a book by Julia Cameron. I shouldn't say read because I really only read about 2 sections, which were the exercises. And the first is about these morning pages, which thankfully I've been doing now, besides for Shabbat, every day. And what I do there is I literally just let my artist ramble. I let my artist speak, and for 3 pages, I throw out everything that's on my mind, possibly. All the stresses, all the things that I sometimes push my artist away because of. I can't talk to you right now, artist. I don't have time for you. And the other thing, which hopefully I'll implement in my own life as well, is called the artist state. And I used to do this, where you spend 2 hours with yourself. Now, what I'd like to introduce you to is the internal conversation with the artist. It can be done either with yourself, with journaling. It can be done with your friends. When you can ask yourself genuinely, what am I missing? What would I like to incorporate into my life? Don't confuse the artist with the critic, because the artist does recognize what isn't there, but it is our own judgment that often impacts how we see the art. There's an idea that Maimonides brings, and he says that in a single moment, an individual can be like Moses, or it can be like Bilam. You could be like the greatest prophet, one of the greatest individuals in all of Judaism, in all of history, and all of the world. Or you can be like one of the worst people. And you're like, I'm an average individual. Like, how can I, let's try to take an equivalent, how can I be a Picasso in a moment? How can I, in a moment, be whichever great or horrible artist? And the truth is, even the best artists and the worst artists can look at something and say, this is my best work ever. or this is my worst work ever. And what is that a reflection of? They created both, did they not? And ultimately, it's not about the art per se, but when you're in that moment, are you choosing to tap into your understanding? We learn about these wonderful people and we learn about these horrible people in a single moment. Would Moshe Rabbeinu, would Moses, who was one of the greatest individuals, you have an understanding if you studied his life, if you studied how he acted, are you tapping into the parts of yourself that you know he would be tapping into in this moment? And if you are, functionally, as far as the world is concerned, as far as internally your mind is concerned, you have now taken not the action that maybe you would have taken because of the way you automate yourself, but you've actually brought to life an individual who has lived, be that mindfully or lack, or God forbid in the other direction. So I hope that each of you is able to really be present for yourself, and first you discover your inner artist, then you can start to share your inner artist, and very often other people will see our inner artist, will appreciate our inner artist more than we will. And this is very common for people who are in the art field. I didn't do it well enough. It is such a love of almost self-sacrifice. And I would like to start the call to embrace your artist, and to have a real conversation and to respect the artist that you have. And once you've done that, and that can be through exercises or that can be through conversation, what you do is you bring out a part of you to the world.